Good evening, and welcome to another session, another conversation, a part of the Black Male Impact series. Today we have as guest Dr. Jack Thomas. Before we get into any of the conversation or even tell you more about Dr. Thomas, I just want to ask those who are here to please go ahead and share the link with your connections. I can guarantee you this conversation is going to be insightful. Um, you will gain perspectives that you can apply to your life, especially on leadership. I know a lot of you know Dr. Thomas, and I'm just looking forward to this conversation just as you are. Um, so, but please go ahead and share with your connections. Share. So just to give you a little bit of insight of who Dr. Thomas is a nationally and internationally recognized leader in higher education and administration with extensive senior level management experience. He has held senior executive positions with various institutions, including president of two universities and interim president of one university. He's also past department chair, executive vice president, and senior vice provost. The list is long, so I'm not going to go into all that Dr. Thomas has accomplished. But I can tell you, he's also an author and speaker and consultant. But before we get into the conversation, Dr. Thomas, welcome to the Black Male Impact. And please, if you don't mind, share with the audience before we get started today.
Thank you so much, Richard. I certainly do appreciate you having me here to talk about leadership and the impact of Black males. I'm just honored to be here. As you stated, I have served as president of two institutions and interim president of another, and have served at various institutions and have dealt a lot with leadership. I hail from Lowndes County, Alabama, which is a great place uh, and a very historical place in a town called Calhoun. And that's where I got my start in Lowndes County, Alabama, a graduate of a fine institution, Alabama A&M University, and did a master's at Virginia State University and a PhD at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. I'm excited to be here and thank you for having me. I look forward to engaging in this discussion that we will have tonight. And I welcome everybody and thank you all for being here.
Well, it's a pleasure, having you here. I have been on the side watching your leadership, the work that you have been doing, and for someone who started behind you in higher education, you have been one of the persons that I look up to, one of the leaders that I have seen, in positions that one day I don't know if I'm gonna, become a president, but we never know what life entails. And as we continue on this journey, anything is possible once we're doing the work, once we are making ourselves available, and anything is possible. But
Absolutely.
it's a pleasure, having you here. And today, as you mentioned, the conversation is going to be around leadership and impact and representation. Because as Black men, it's great, for us to be in spaces where we exemplify our greatness, not just because for our own sake, but for those who are looking up to us can see what they can become. So, my first question to you today, which is on leadership, what does authentic leadership look like for Black men, and how can we embrace it in our daily lives?
Well, thank you for the question. Um, Authentic leadership for Black men starts with, I think, self awareness, integrity, and a deep commitment to lifting others as we climb. I always feel that you have to reach back and help somebody else. To me, that's authentic leadership. and mentoring others, and helping lift other individuals. And it's about being confident in who we are, standing on our own personal values, and making decisions that are rooted in both principles and purpose. Throughout my career, I have led a very transparent leadership style, and I embrace authentic leadership daily, and that means to showing up as yourself, your full self, and as you really are. A lot of times, leaders are afraid to show who they really are, that passionate side that people really need to see in leaders. But I know leaders have to be strong, and we have to protect ourselves too
Right.
as we lead. But it's that compassion, and then showing that empathy for others as well as we lead, and look at people who not just getting the job done, which is what we are basically hired to do, but at the same time, you want to work with individuals on their personal and professional goals as we lead as Black men.
And I really appreciate the perspective on being our authentic self, because as you mentioned, sometimes we are not, or we don't want to be vulnerable, showing that passionate or compassionate part of who we are, because we may think people are going to take advantage of us being passionate
Exactly.
and compassionate.
Exactly. And,
And
and sometimes they do.
and that can be a challenge when we want to be seen as a strong leader. But as you shared, which is great, to hear it from you, who have been in those positions for a long time, that it's okay that we show up and we show our passion, display our passion in what we're doing, not just come off as being this hard, strong leader. And because I think being that's how I think leaders were supposed to show up.
Mhm.
Be strong and maybe forceful. But I think over time they realize having that compassionate part of them, and showing empathy to the people, because you don't want people to run away from you. You want them to stay within your organization and work and support the work that you're doing.
Exactly. And you want to them to know that they're valued and that they're supported as well in that environment.
And I think that is really great, because no one want to work in an environment where they don't feel valued and supported. Which leads me to my next question. And I may come back to what you have shared on lift as we climb as leaders, because I know that is also important. But I want to ask this question: how can we collaborate effectively to amplify our efforts and reach more people?
Well, I think we can do that by, I think, through mentorship, um, and working with individuals. As individuals look at what you're doing, and it's about empowering people and bringing more people along as um, as you go through uh, your career and leadership. And I think it's about empowering people, and then letting in. A lot of times, I go back to my own personal journey, where I had worked with Dr. Dolores R. Spikes when I was at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. I served as her executive assistant. I became the executive vice president, and then eventually interim president. She saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and how she brought me up through administration. And I think we have to do things like that. There are times when we can see things where others can't see things in themselves. And then we do what we need to do to elevate them, to help to cultivate them, and encourage them, and give them various kinds of opportunities. I think that's how we do it. That's one way of doing it.
That's a really important perspective, especially for us as Black men, because not all of us, coming from an environment where we have, direct support, or someone who can really push us into a position so we can maximize
Hmm.
our ability. And that is something that, as leaders, as Black men, we need to really think about, because we're going to come across individuals that display greatness, but they may need someone to help to channel them in that space. um, that is really important, and I think it is really something that I think maybe we need to practice more as Black men. I don't know how well we are practicing it,
Hmm.
because to go back to what you shared about being comfortable with who you are. And I think, once we are comfortable with who we are, I think we remove that ego and we can allow someone else to shine. And I think, that's something that we have to practice. And I believe when more of us are shining, more of us are being great, will have a greater impact within the organization and our community.
Absolutely. I recently spoke at a leadership conference, and one of the participants who was there sent me an email and said, I remember what you said. Know who you are and whose you are. If you don't know who you are and whose you are, particularly if you don't know who you are going into these leadership roles, you have to have thick skin, and you have to know that a lot of the things that you endure as leaders is not just about you; it's about that position, and we have to know how to handle that and wear it as leaders as well. But know who you are and know whose you are.
With the knowing who you are, right? Is it something that can be mentored into someone, help them to find who they are so they can be more secure?
Absolutely, I think so. Um, it is good to have a life outside of your outside of your work, your career, and that is very important. And that's what I was alluding to when I said that you have to have a life outside of the job. Don't make your position who you are, because the position is what you hold, is not who you are. Because you have a your own being, your own person, and you have your own relationships outside of that job.
Yeah, I think that is important, and
Mhm.
that will also, I believe, alleviate some of the pressure. Not thinking that I am the job, but what I bring to the position.
Right. And the job does not define who you are.
That's right. And that goes back to, as you said, having one's personal values, things that you value.
Absolutely.
And which, leads me to my next question, which is still on leadership. What role does, um, what leadership qualities are essential for addressing systemic barriers and creating sustainable change?
I like to start with resiliency. You have to be resilient. Um, Strategic thinking and collaboration, I think, are key. That's resiliency, strategic thinking, and collaboration. And all I can say, throughout my career, I've faced a lot of challenges in leadership roles, where systemic barriers have existed, and they still do. And it required patience. It requires long-term vision to create meaningful change. People don't want to change. They ask for change, but really, some people have difficulties with change. And as leaders, and you're trying to make significant changes, particularly going in as a change agent or being a transformational leader, you're going to face challenges. But leaders must be willing to challenge outdated systems, build coalitions, and stay persistent in their pursuit of progress. I think that's the key. Don't give up, but you have to continue uh, to make those changes, and then you want buy-in as well. You got to have buy-in when you do make changes, and people need to see the significance in that and see the value in those changes that are really needed in order for institutions to move to not just, I always say, not just to survive, but to thrive and to move to the next level.
And as you mentioned, that people, sometimes ask for change, but they are reluctant to change. But if you could encourage, I know you mentioned, having patience, when you're thinking about creating change as a leader. But what else would you say to an aspiring leader that, will be facing pushbacks when they decide to make changes?
Well, first of all, what I say to would-be leaders or would-be presidents or would-be senior level leaders, you have to make sure you have a foundation. Make sure you. I always give the example of Humpty Dumpty sitting on a wall. What doesn't what, why was there an egg on a wall without a foundation? There are some individuals who don't have the foundation. You got to have the foundation, the knowledge, the resiliency, the courage, and when there is pushback, you have to still. I always say I'm one of the best communicators. You have to communicate with people regardless, um, and you have to show compassion, empathy, and the list goes on. Um, but I always say continue that journey and continue even when you face pushback and know that it's not personal.
Correct.
Um, Whomever is in that position is going to face similar things when you have those, when you are making changes, which is what we're talking about. Yes.
So and I really appreciate those pointers that you gave, from having a foundation, going in, knowing, having the knowledge of the work that is expected of you, and having the courage to stand up on what you believe in, and also to address some of the changes that needs to happen. Because if you don't have the courage, because you can have the knowledge, but if you
Mhm.
don't have the courage to talk about it, you may not get past some of the challenges that do come. And also, as you mentioned, communicate, and also have to communicate with those who may not share your vision. But I
Absolutely.
think those are really important, and I'm glad that you say that, especially for those who are listening.
And
And
let me also just jump in right here as well. Some people you're not going to change regardless,
yeah,
but the key is to try, even to work with those who may consider themselves your enemy, because you can win individuals over. I've done that before. I've won my enemies over by just explaining and talking. But there are some people you're just not going to win over, and you have to also understand that.
and that's a great reminder. Everyone is not going to change, and sometimes you just don't want to spend too much time on those who don't want to. Some will have to change on their own, just listening to what you're saying, and some will see the vision after you communicate it to them. I'm going to shift gear a little bit from leadership to social impact. And the question that I want to ask you, well, I have a couple questions on social impact, but my first question to you: what areas in our communities require the most attention for creating lasting social impact?
Well, I would start with education, of course. Education, economic opportunity, and mental health, which is a very serious issue that we are faced with, and particularly with Black men. Education is, I consider, to be the greater equalizer, and it ensures access to quality education for young Black men. That is critical. It helps to propel you to I always say the upper middle class. I always give the story about how I grew up in Lowndes County, Alabama. That sits between Selma and Montgomery, Alabama. It's called the Black Belt. And I'm sure many people know about that. It was a very poor area. And I was a first generation college student. And it was my mother who said to me that I want you to finish high school. I want you to go to college. Somebody has to do something a little different from what your father and I have done. And I often tell the story of how they had to work in the fields and deal with the tumultuous battles of civil rights. But my mother didn't get a formal education, but she knew the value of an education. So I say education and economic empowerment, helping individuals create generational wealth through entrepreneurship and financial literacy. And that also plays a significant role in long term stability. And one example is that just recently, as a leader and someone who's accomplished, we have to pull the next generation along with us. Um, I, I have two sons, and I talk with my sons about uh, generational wealth. I talk with them about success. What does success look like? And just recently, I have a gentleman who I had lunch with on yesterday, and he agreed to um, have a workshop for my family. I asked him to do a workshop for my family, and he said that workshop is going to be called Family Financial Wellness Workshop.
Wow.
Family Financial Wellness Workshop. And that's going to be an hour long workshop. And I wanted them to hear something from somebody else other than myself. And finally, mental health is often overlooked, but we must create spaces where Black men feel safe to prioritize their well being. Um, a lot of times, when we talk about mental health, it has that stigma
Yeah.
to it. And then a lot of Black men growing up during my time, you know, who got counseling, who went to see a counselor and that kind of thing for different issues. But, hey, we learned later on that, hey, that's what we should be doing,
Yeah.
getting the help that we need rather than shunning away from that. So I would just say education, economic opportunity, and mental health.
And those are some really great areas to focus on, and just to really highlight what you have stated, especially on education, as it being the greatest equalizer, because you can start in poverty, and education can get you to wherever you want to be,
Mhm.
but it can definitely get you out of the situation that you were born into. And there are so many examples. And sometimes those young people don't get to see individuals who have started from zero. But I think it is important, that they see and hear, just as you share your story with your parents and what they have done, even though they didn't have formal education, but they know the value of education.
Right, right. And my mother, and I'm sure a lot of people have said this, once you get the education, no one can take it away from you.
That's
Once
that's
you
that's
get
right.
that, no one can take it away from you.
That's right. And I think, that is really important. And there's a quote that I want to remember, but it's not coming to me so clear right now. I think I don't remember if it was Booker T. Washington who said it, with education, it is hard to enslave someone who is educated, something of that nature. So
Mhm.
it's hard to let someone stay stuck in a situation when they're educated, because they're going to start finding ways to get out of whatever situation they are in or find themselves in. But also, you touch on economic opportunity,
Mhm.
and that is so important for our community. Just having the chance to create generational wealth. But
Mhm.
as you mentioned, you are now bringing your family into the mix by having someone to provide the knowledge that you may have shared with them, but just from a new perspective. And I think that is really important for our community.
Mhm. Yes. Um, I mentioned that my parents didn't get a formal education. However, what my parents, they were brilliant. My mother's deceased, but my father still lives.
Oh,
He'll be 92 on the 24th of this month.
oh
And
wow.
when you sit at his feet, he talks about all of these things. Leaving, he goes back to the Bible where you want to leave. Uh, what is it? You want to leave a wealth. It doesn't say it like that, but I'm paraphrasing, for your children and your children's children. Uh,
Correct.
and when he was talking about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that promise that God gave, he will bless their children and their children's children. The same thing with this wealth. That's wealth.
Yeah.
But economic empowerment is what we do. And that's what my dad has done all of those years. And he still does that when I'm around him. So I just cherish his wisdom that he still has and able to articulate.
And that's great, to have that experience, as you mentioned, even though formal education wasn't a part of it. They have the knowledge and the experience, and to really impart that wisdom to.
Right, right, and also let me just add this too. He has, although he's 91, he still gets out on his farm and go to see about his cattle, his cows, and he said, "Now this is my retirement right here." I'm like,
Yep.
"This is a 90-year-old, 91-year-old man." He said, "This is my retirement. These cows out here," and he gets up every day like he's going to work. That's keeping me going, he said, and I'm like, wow. But just to hear him talk
Yeah.
is powerful.
Well, and that's great, and I think, having something to do, that really, keeps him, as he said, keeps him going. And I think, it's, even for us, too, we have to, stay active,
Exactly.
stay active, and don't, take the opportunity we have, to move around lightly, because, we need that strength. And the more we do it, I think, the stronger we'll remain to do the things we want to do.
Absolutely. The last time I went to the doctor, my doctor said, "You have to have a purpose. What's your purpose?"
And exercise, or any activity that keeps you moving, will help to give it a purpose to keep going. But I want to, I know you talk about mental health. That's really a stigma, and I know you said, in your time growing up, that's one thing, but we still struggle with that today.
I
We
know,
don't
I
talk
know, I
about.
know. You're right. You're
Yeah, we don't talk about. It's getting a little bit better, because there are more forums, there are more conversations around mental health, about stress, about depression,
right.
and the list goes on. But as Black men, we still find it difficult. But as you mentioned, having that safe space for Black men to talk about the challenges, um, I think, although it's getting better, I think, sometimes, that's what prevents, Black men from talking about their challenges, because they don't feel comfortable, sharing, because they may have shared and be burnt or not supported as they would want to be. But that is one thing that, I think is getting better, but we still need to do a lot of work.
Absolutely. At my church here, I attend church here and a member of Mount Calvary Missionary Baptist Church. And then every month, and last month, I was the moderator for a panel on dealing with black males with the theme that we have. And we had two young black men who just come up, and I was just so, they were on the panel, and what they had to say up to us as more seasoned black men and asking us questions and so forth. You know, it reminded me of that space, and they felt so comfortable because we had created that space for them to express themselves. And I think that that's what we have to do as seasoned black men who have had those the various kinds of experiences. Um, we just have to create that safe space. And that's what I try to do with my mentees as well. I have not just black men, but I have two black women that I'm working with right now at various institutions, doing executive coaching with them and creating that space. At first, I just could see that they weren't really. Well, kind of hesitant, and then now you should just see the questions that they ask, all kinds of questions. So I'm just like, wow, we've created that safe space. But it also is a two-way street. It has to be a safe space for me as well to express and share those things also.
And I think the more we see, black men doing it, the more comfortable
Mhm,
we will, because talking about challenges are being vulnerable about what you have difficulty with. It used to come, well, maybe it still is, comes off as being weak.
mhm,
But I've learned over the years that it takes great strength
mhm,
to talk about the challenges or ask for help or ask those questions, which will give us clarity on what we want to accomplish. As you mentioned, the two young ladies that you're working with, as executive coach, now they are more open to
mhm,
share. And the same thing with us. The more comfortable we get about talking about the challenges and what we're dealing with, I think it will get to a point where it's not going to be such a stigma
mhm.
to talk about our challenges. So, and as you mentioned that about just being vulnerable, talking about our challenges and stuff like that, which is still on social impact. How can we collaborate effectively to amplify our efforts and reach more people?
Um, Collaboration starts with a shared vision and trust, which is what I was talking about, just recently. I've learned that real impact happens when individuals and organizations align their strengths to achieve a common goal. And whether it's in higher education or whether it's in a community programs, effective partnerships, uh, they require communication, shared accountability, and the wellness to uplift each other, work and whatever individuals are doing. Collaboration should never be about competition, and it should be about collective progress. And I think that a lot of times when we talk about collaboration, we tend to get involved. We tend to associate it with competition. It should never be about competition. Even the people you mentor, the people you help, a lot of times, and you're trying to pull people along, sometimes it becomes competition for certain people, and it should never be that.
I can agree, and but that's a valid point, because we're not going to move the needle forward, and we're not going to make as much progress if we are competing when we should be collaborating. But the shared vision, I think that is important for collaboration. The persons need to buy into the vision, and that will also help to develop the trust that is needed to move forward. So that leads me to my next question, still on social impact. What role does economic empowerment play in driving meaningful social change? I know you mentioned earlier about the economic opportunity,
Mhm.
which is an area that needs to be focusing on. So, how will economic empowerment play that meaningful change, for the social change?
I think that economic empowerment provides stability. It provides independency and the ability to invest back into our communities. Um, we have to equip our people with the tools to build wealth, whether through home ownership, entrepreneurship, or financial education. And when Black men have economic security, we can better support our families. We can fund community initiatives and create the kind of change that sustains itself for generations to come. And it goes back to what I mentioned a little earlier, and what my dad taught us. But home ownership, particularly the way things are now,
Mhm.
it is difficult to own a home. And again, I always go back to my sons. I'm like, hey, you got to get a house. You can't be renting from some. You can't be renting from other people. You're paying their rent. Pay my rent. I'll buy it, and you just pay me if it comes down to that. But go out and make sure you do that. Own something. Start your own business. And then goes back to what I said about the family financial wellness workshop. Um, Financial education. We have to be educated. A lot of us are not, and particularly at our colleges and universities, a lot of students, when they get the financial aid, they use those loans to buy cars. And I know a lot of individuals come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. They go back and they try to help their families. We understand that, but then you have that debt after you graduate, so we have to teach financial education, and I think it starts in grade school. Don't wait until they become college students.
Mhm. Yeah, those are really important. But as we talk about the stability, especially from an economic empowerment standpoint, and as black men, when we are stable, I think we get more done. I think we'll be able to
Mhm.
focus in on what can help not just move us forward, but also move our family and move our community forward. But when it comes to economic empowerment, which having that opportunity to um, achieve the things you want, I've seen where I've read, and you can just tell me if you have heard this before, where black men, once they are educated, sometimes they have a hard time, getting the opportunity they want because of their education. Like people becoming threatened by them. uh, do you have you ever come across any research from that nature where we want the education, we get the education, but sometimes the opportunity seems a bit hard to come by, not because of lack of qualification.
Absolutely. I have read a lot about that, and I've experienced it. And I have a number of people that I've come across and mentees who are very well educated, and they get rejection letter after rejection letter. But I tell them, stay the course, because of your education, because of your experiences, somebody at some point is going to look at you, and someone is going to hire you. And I just had that with one of my mentees just recently, who just became a vice president at a university, at a major university. And he was concerned for a while. And I said, just stay the course, it will work. And he just became a vice president a couple of months ago.
Right.
So, and it takes seasoned individuals to help them along the way, just like people did with me. They kept encouraging me. My mentors kept encouraging me. It didn't happen right away. And yes, people do become threatened by your education. But was the United Negro College Fund, and education is a terrible thing to waste.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But as you mentioned earlier, you have it already, you're not going to lose it. You
Mm-mm.
have the education. But why I asked the question, I shared something yesterday, and the young man said, "Man, I wanted to hear that."
Mhm.
Because I shared that. Sometimes you don't get this rejected
Mhm.
because of your qualifications. Sometimes you're over qualified, and some people are threatened. But I've read it. There's a research done some time ago on the topic, and as you mentioned, sometimes we just need a reminder as
Mhm.
black men. It's not because we are not good enough, but sometimes the redirection is really important for something greater. Because I've seen
Right.
individuals who reach out for opportunity, and what they wanted was not they what they got was more significant in regards to pay than what they initially wanted. So
Right.
them getting disappointed, redirect them to something even greater.
And sometimes I would add that, sometimes individuals don't have the confidence. Just 2 days ago, I had one of my former students to call me. He's being interviewed for a CEO position, and he talked to me. It was, well, what should I be thinking? What should I what do I need to do? Because he got an interview, first CEO interview. I said, you're very well qualified. Talk about your experiences, those things that you have done, your successes. And he had that interview, and I just talked to him again today, and he was just very, very excited and very hopeful. And he did a good job on the interview from what he's told me. But sometimes we have to encourage individuals and let them know that you deserve this. You belong here. You belong in this position, and you deserve better.
And that's we could close on that, because black men sometimes don't think they deserve, and because you have heard, like, it's like they have this imposter syndrome. They work hard, but get to the point where they're supposed to, and now they're having doubts that they are worthy of the position, or worthy of the opportunity. So that's a great reminder, to all of us as black men. Once we do the work, we are worthy of the position that comes available. Let's not talk ourselves out of the opportunity once it presents itself, which is going to shift gear a little bit, on representation, which you have been doing, and even some of what you have shared earlier, still cover representation and how important it is, because it's important that other individuals see us in spaces and are seeing us as inspiration. So my first question to you: how can we ensure that our presence in various spaces reflects the values and aspirations of Black men?
Well, first, I would say by leading with purpose and integrity, we set the tone for how we are perceived.
Hmm.
And I'll say that again, by leading
Oh,
but with purpose and integrity, we set the tone for how we are going to be perceived. And it's not just about being in the room. It's about making sure that our voices are heard and our contributions are respected. Representation isn't just about fitting into someone else's mold. And I think that's where we go wrong sometimes, because we try to fit the mold. It's about standing firm in our own identity and bringing our full experience to the table. Who knows uh, Dr. Cross, who Dr. Cross is, and his integrity, the respect, the things that you've done, and vice versa. So I think that's very, very important. We try to fit in the mold, and we don't always fit, because you bring something else to the table.
yeah.
You bring a unique experience. I write morning devotions, and I wrote one morning devotion where I said, if everybody was just like me, it would be what a boring world this would be. I have a mentor who calls me. He said, "You're the most boringest man around." Certain things. Just with certain things. But
Yeah.
what a boring world this would be. We're all different, and we bring something different to the table, a different perspective to the table. And that kind of thing must be respected. The things
Yeah.
that you do, the work that you do, has to be respected as well. And it goes back to diversity and
Yeah.
inclusion.
Correct, correct. And but as you said, leading with purpose and integrity. But it also goes back to what you have shared earlier in the conversation about valuing people, or your values. Knowing what you stand for, knowing that you bring something specific, and being appreciated and supported. But yes, we all are not here to be the same. We are all different, and we have different values and perspectives. that
Mhm.
we can share. And once we are in an environment, that appreciate what we have to share, I think individuals will feel more comfortable because you have to have some level of comfort to share your perspective, and
Mhm.
knowing that although my view or the way that I do things may be different, it should be appreciated as well. I'm not going to spend too long on that question,
Mhm.
because we have some more questions that we need to get through. We may not get through all the questions that we have here, but we're going to try.
Okay.
But leading with integrity and purpose is important as Black men, especially when we're in the spaces that we're in. And I like what you said. We're always representing ourselves. And I remember my one of my mentors said that to me. He said, "Man, it doesn't matter where you are. You have to understand that you're going to represent yourself.
Mhm.
If the environment is not doing the work or going the extra mile, that's not your business. Your business is to do the work required of you and go the extra mile if that's who you are." So I really appreciate you sharing that as a great reminder to all of us that we're always representing ourselves, which is really important. Which leads me to my next question. Still on representation, what impact does representation have on breaking stereotypes and shifting societal narratives?
Um, Representation disrupts, I think, the narratives that people historically have of Black men and their potential. When young people see individuals like us in leadership roles as educators, as CEOs, or community organizers, it reshapes their belief in what's possible. And every time we excel in our fields, we redefine expectations and open new doors for those coming behind us. So it shows them what they can become and that they're not limited by um, that stereotypical narrative that's out there. And I think some time ago, I said that we have to take charge of our own narrative
Right.
and we have to rewrite the narrative and not to allow individuals to write the narrative for us. You can't write about me. I have to decide and write about myself. I have to write my own chapter. Individuals shouldn't not be able to write that chapter about me.
And whatever they write is going to be what you display, not something that they made
Ex-
up. Um,
Exactly.
but
Exactly.
yeah, and I really like what you said about the representation and breaking stereotypes. It helped to reshape the belief, because when the young men see other Black men, in spaces doing their work, standing on business, it helps to change their belief. And there's a quote that's out there that says it's easier to become what you see,
Mhm.
because once you show up and you help to change their belief, now they're not going to believe what the stereotype is about Black men. And also, like, redefine expectation.
Mhm.
Man, that is so powerful. That is really powerful because sometimes we don't expect the best from ourselves. And if we don't expect the best from ourselves, we're not going to put the best foot forward to do what it takes so we don't only survive but thrive. I really, really like, redefine the expectations, because, that's how young men get to see and believe what is possible for them.
Mhm. Mhm. Those good examples are there, but it's what's portrayed in the media.
Correct.
Those good men who are out there doing these kinds of things, doing those good things, those positive things, they're there. We all have those stories that we can tell, but those are the stories that are on the back burner. We have to
Correct.
put them on the front burner and
Yeah.
we have to tell our story.
I strongly agree, and I think not think that was one of the reasons for the black male impact, because I remember when I started my doctoral journey, and I start to look into because I have to find black male leaders, and then when I start to look into the schools and look into different organizations, I was shocked, to be honest. This is just 2018. I
Hmm.
was shocked the amount of black men with PhDs. I could not believe. I was like, this is not what we are shown. We
Hmm.
are not shown black men with PhDs. They're, as you said, they're there. To my surprise, I was really shocked when I start to, do my own research, start to dig deeper, start to reach out to schools. And then when I speak to someone, they said, oh, you need to speak to Dr. Brown, Dr. Johnson. And I was like, man, I can't believe this. But
Hmm.
this is not what we see as black men, and that's one of the reasons why with the Black Male Impact, I
Hmm.
try to reach out to black men that I see out there doing the work, especially intentionally, to make a difference, and to let's hear your journey, what you have done to make an impact or even grow.
Hmm. And I certainly do appreciate you, and I think we need to champion and support you because you've created that space for Black men to tell their stories, and to communicate and share with the public those hidden things that we really need to know. I like what you said about the PhD. I think this is the perfect time for me to throw in my little book. And I think I shared this before within these gates: academic life, university life, and the presidency.
Okay.
Every and it's a trajectory to senior level leadership. And in there, I talk about those individuals, and if those any individuals on here that I've mentored, they know that I push the PhD. If I'm going to mentor you, you owe me 3 degrees: bachelor's, master's, and PhD, unless you get a law degree or an MD. And I told my sons that same thing. And my oldest son just recently finished his PhD
Oh man,
at
that's
Prairie
awesome.
View A&M University. So it can be done, and we have to encourage our Black men.
Yeah, man. And congratulations to your son. That is great. I tell you, even when I do talk to students, I start to hear them saying, "Man, I want to be doctor this and a doctor that," because it gives them hope
Mhm.
of what's possible. So it's just great that they can see more people. And also congratulations on the book. I know you spoke about it. So I know for those who are they will start to
Mhm.
want to reach out to you and get that book and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, so regarding the representation and changing the narrative, how do we balance the pressure of being a role model while remaining authentic?
And I go back to what I said earlier. You can be a role model, but just be yourself, authentic. And it doesn't mean that you're perfect. Being a role model doesn't mean that you're perfect. It means that you're real. And even when you have those challenges, or you may have some shortcomings or those kinds of things, it shows that you're human. I have a mentee who tells me that all the time. You're human. You're not perfect. Uh, and there's only one who was perfect, and that's back in biblical what I'm talking about. But
Yes.
you're not perfect, but it means you're being real. And it's about showing that success comes with setbacks. It also comes with growth. And I'll say I've made mistakes in my journey, but what's important is how we respond to those setbacks, or the challenges or the mistakes that you've made. And do you learn from them? And then how do you move forward as well? Um, it allows us to connect with others in a meaningful way, And providing that leadership is not always about title. Uh, and it goes back, it's about impact, which is your theme.
Yeah.
It's about impact. It's not always about titles.
Yeah, and that's something that we have to take seriously. As you mentioned, that we are all humans, we all make mistakes sometimes, and that we have to realize what we have to offer, and not just thinking that we have to be perfect every time. I think that is important. So I'm going to shift gear a little bit from um, representation to role model,
Mhm.
which you have mentioned, throughout the conversation on how important it is, why they need to see us. So, why is it important for Black men to actively mentor the next generation? You have mentioned, mentoring. So, why is it important that we actively mentor the next generation?
Well, representation matters. Young Black men need to see someone who has walked their path. I was a first generation student just like you were. Um, Someone who's faced many obstacles, similar obstacles. I've faced some similar things, and perseverance as well. I've had to persevere. Um, Mentorship provides guidance, opens doors, and it ensures that success isn't just an individual achievement, but a collective effort. Uh, my mentors have provided that guidance for me. They have also opened doors for me. I wouldn't be where I am had it not been for those mentors that I've had. I wouldn't have certain knowledge had it not been for those mentors. So it's very, very important that we mentor the next generation that's coming along, and that we support them and cheer them on as much as possible.
Oh yes, I think that is important, and that also gives them the courage and confidence to pursue the things that they want.
Mhm.
I think that is important. But from your perspective, do you see it as something that we do, um, just do for the next generation, actively mentoring the next generation?
Oh, absolutely. Um, and I feel that I do that, and I encourage others to do that as well. Um, we have to mentor, and we have to have that next generation to carry on this work that we've done. We have to have that next generation to see um, individuals as role models or mentors, because they're going to have to do the same thing. But we want to make sure we set a good example.
I think that is important, and they are always watching,
Hmm.
what we do and what we don't do. So my next question on role model and why it is important. What actions can we take to consistently set a positive example for young Black boys?
I think we have to be going back to something that I said earlier. We have to be intentional. Um, Whether it's formal mentorship or whether it's just individuals simply watching you along the way. I had a gentleman tell me that I've been watching you for years and I know your whole trajectory. Uh, and I'm like, really? Wow. It was kind of scary. I didn't stalk you. I haven't stalked you over the years, but it's good to know that somebody was watching and saw all of the success stories as well as the challenges that I've gone through. And he told me all of those things, and he said, I want to be a university president just like you were. And I'm like, okay, how can I help you? And we have to show them that success is possible in various fields. Uh, and I always say, if you want to be a doctor, surround yourself with doctors. You want to be a lawyer, surround yourself with lawyers. You want to be an educator, surround yourself with educators, entertainer, or what have you. Uh, you have to find those individuals. And for me, it's kind of sad when I talk with some individuals who will say that I've never had a mentor. I'm like, really? That's what we teach. Um, you can't be. Eugene Pitcham, a former lawyer out of Chicago, said, "You can't be what you can't see."
Yeah.
Uh, so, you know, get mentors. Surround yourself with individuals who are going to have a positive effect on you, because we face so many negative things every day. But surround yourself with positive people who are going to help you.
And just to take what you just said, if you want to be a doctor, surround yourself with doctors. And if you want, whoever you want to be, surround yourself with, those individuals. And sometimes you don't even have to have them around you physically, but watch them from afar, just as the young man did. That he was watching you, seeing your journey. And there are individuals out there, when they talk to you, they say, "Man, I've seen what you have done, the success that you have." So because they can be mentee, even without talking to you first, because they're learning from you. And as black men, I think that is something that we have to understand, that there are young people watching us, or even adults, even before they say anything to us. So it's important that we represent ourselves the best way possible, especially when we're in positions of leadership. So my next question to you, still on role model, and we are on top of the hour, which time fly by very fast. When you're having a good conversation, although we may not get to the all questions, but I want to ask this question: how can we encourage black men to see themselves as role models, regardless of their position or title? I know you mentioned that we're not supposed to think of ourselves as our position, but how can we encourage black men to be role models, regardless of their position and title?
Well, I go back to what I said earlier. Being a role model isn't about having a title. It's about living with integrity and setting an example through daily actions. People want to see you, and I go back to your authentic self, and set an example through daily actions. Black men at every level have something to offer. At every level, it doesn't have to be an education. You can be a bus driver, a truck driver. You have something to offer, whether it's advice, whether it's guidance, or simply showing up as a positive presence in the lives of young people. And we don't have to wait until we've made it to make a difference. You can make a difference at any level and wherever you are. You can always get up in the morning and say, I'm going to make a difference. I am going to encourage somebody. I'm going to have something positive to say about someone. So I think mentors and role models, people see individuals as role models, and they want to achieve things similar to what those individuals have achieved.
And that's great. And as we are at the top of the hour, it's coming close to ending our conversation today. I know I've taken a lot of notes, and I know those who are watching have gotten great insights and perspective from today's conversation. But before we go today, I just want to ask you my final question before we finish this conversation today, which is on positive self-image. Because we talk about impact, we talk about
Mhm.
representation, we talk about social change. What practices can help black men maintain a positive self-image despite societal challenges?
Um, I think black men, we have to show them, um, not just tell them. Uh, we have to be living examples, investing in their development, and giving them real opportunities to grow and succeed in how we instill confidence and ambition in this next generation.
And that real opportunities to grow. We have to, as you mentioned, just open doors and guide them
Right.
as we go. For the listeners who are here, Dr. Thomas, I just want to say thank you for being here. I still have a few more questions that we didn't get to ask and answer today. But this will give us an opportunity to get you back here to share more, because I also want to talk to you about your book that you have published, especially to encourage upcoming and aspiring leaders within higher education.
Mhm.
Because I've interviewed a lot of educators, and I know a lot may have the aspiration to become, leaders, presidents, executive leaders within institutions.
Yes. Well, the book is Within These Gates: Academic Life, University Life, and the Presidency. It's really good for individuals who want to aspire to senior level positions, whether that's the vice president or another senior level position or a president. And the next book, I should have the first draft on the 15th of this month, is entitled Leading Through Crisis. Leading Through Crisis. And it talks about the crisis that I've gone through in my trajectory and in my career. I look forward to talking about that book as well as at some point. And just let me know when you need me back. Thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that we have helped and inspired some individuals uh, to continue this on your journey as you move forward. So thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, it's a pleasure. Just to touch on a few things that you've said before we leave today, from knowing oneself, the importance of patience, um, leading with integrity and purpose. And that is a great reminder. And you said something, with us, dismantling the stereotype, that we help to reshape the belief, which is really powerful, and redefine expectations. We let those who are coming behind know that more is possible. Dr. Thomas, it's a pleasure, having you here on the Black Male Impact, and I'm looking forward to our next conversation, which I'll let you know when. Listeners, it's a pleasure, having you here with us, and please continue to support the Black Male Impact. Hopefully, we have some good news coming up, because I'm trying to find me some corporate sponsors so we can help to magnify and amplify what we're trying to do with the Black Male Impact. Again, thanks for being here with us. The Black Male Impact is where positive changes are inspired.